What's up everybody, it's George back again with Warp Charge Gaming. Excited to be here today to give you a Kill Teams video on some advanced rules that come up a lot with questions online on say different Kill Teams Facebook groups, as well as some tactical information that might be able to help you in your games. At this point I've gotten out about 50 games and I still, just to this day, I'm coming up with a few details that I might have misplayed that I hope to be able to help you avoid going forward as well. For instance, this hasn't came up very often for me in my games, but I realize now that I wouldn't have known better because I wasn't paying attention. And that is that if you were to look up the charge phase and choosing your targets to charge, if you're not within an inch of an enemy model, you can charge. But if this happens in the move phase, and the charge is a non-normal move. So if you look into the movement phase, it expresses that if you begin the movement phase, which is both you and your opponent's movement phase as a whole, within 1 inch of an enemy model, then you can no longer charge or do any other type of move except for a fallback. So this means that if your opponent wins the initiative and falls back from your combat, you are still in a position where that model that it fell back from cannot move in any way except for a fallback move. Therefore, it cannot also charge the model. This, of course, gives someone an opportunity to fall back and not just be charged over and over and over again. It actually puts a much bigger emphasis and purpose behind the rule. And some people have complained about how, well, why would my fighter just stand there? You have to be a little bit more imaginative than that, and imagine that if someone is falling back, they're suppressing fire, they're laying it down, they're running away in a way that is the most optimized for escape. And at that point, your fighter needs to decide whether they themselves will fall back from potential enemy fire, or if they will themselves pull out a gun and stand and shoot. So I think that's a pretty important rule there for sure that I think is definitely overlooked. People thinking about traditional 40K, or just to go to the charge phase and you're not seeing the detail that lives within the movement phase as a whole where the charge happens. So if you begin the turn and within 1 inch of an enemy model, then even if they fall back from you, that model's still stuck there. And if it moves in any way, then it is falling back. You can't ready, you can't do anything else as the rules dictate besides fall back or shoot basically at that point, because you cannot move in any way. So I think that's a very important thing. I got that confirmed by Mike Brandt, the Nova Open tournament organizer, as well as playtester for GW for Kill Teams. So thank you, Mike, for that. That was on the Kill Team Skirmish Facebook page. There's definitely a lot of great Kill Team Facebook groups with a lot of cool information popping up, people questioning things and learning together. So I suggest that you check those out if you're not a part of them. Now I'm just going to keep kind of going through some important elements that I think are overlooked or not necessarily employed as much as they should be. For instance, Obscurity is such a critical element within the game for survivability. Not only does it provide the -1 hit to hit modifiers, but additionally it's helping you out in the injury table. If your model is obscured when they roll on the injury, then of course you're going to get -1 to that result. So they now need a 5 to kill you instead of just a 4. And that can come from both your own enemy model as well, of course, as terrain. I think it's also interesting to note how looking at the clearest point of the model's view when determining obscurity. If you're behind say an Aegis defense line with a slit, a gun hole in it where your eyes can look through, that from your forehead or your eyes looking through that piece of terrain, it is a clear line of sight to say a model that's out in the open. Just because there's a piece of terrain in front of you as the shooter doesn't necessarily mean that you're obscured from your firing model. If they're out in the open, they're out in the open. It only is when there's pieces of terrain that's like say more than an inch from your model that is obscuring the model does it actually become obscured. And of course, you're supposed to dictate at the beginning of the game between you and your opponent, if your model is questionable in any way, what dictates the whole part of the model, which is going to be all of its limbs, torso, and head. So, spiky bits like guns and banners and things of that nature don't actually count when lining up the shot. So keep that in mind. The -1 to the injury table is clutch, and don't forget as well that also is incorporated in combat. If there is a piece of terrain between you and the enemy model, then that also is obscurity when dictating your injury table, as well as -1s to hit. Now, another major factor that I think can be not paid attention to if you don't read closely is that the psychic phase is also affected by these situations. So if someone were to do a psi bolt to you, say a Grey Knight, and caused you a mortal wound to suffer an injury roll, there's still going to be -1 to that injury table due to the obscuring terrain. So keep that in mind. Psychic, combat, and shooting is a -1 to the injury table, and of course -1 to hit. This, of course, puts a lot of even further purpose and around piling in and consolidation. These are very important parts of the game, as well as in 40K, and it's a dance to utilize the pile in and consolidate accurately. Or say flamers is a great example. Flamers, you don't want to charge into that Overwatch because they hit automatically. They don't have to have those 6s to hit. So what's often a great situation, if they give you the opportunity to, is that you would charge something that's next to a flamer, so that when you are able to pile in within 3 inches, moving towards the, closer to the nearest enemy model, that you can also pull into combat or get within 1 inch of the flamer as well, so that you can ignore their Overwatch and pull them into combat. Now, of course, you can't be able to fight them because they weren't one of the charging models, but you did remove its ability to Overwatch and to shoot, and now you could even charge in with another model towards the flamer without having to take the flame into the face. So definitely piling in is clutch. It's a way to get around that terrain. So you always want to keep in mind when you're charging not to always go into base to base. You want to keep that availability to be able to maneuver around the figure to hopefully pull in other pieces of fighters into combat, or to manipulate yourself around the board, either getting on objective, getting behind enemy lines, or things of that nature. So next I'd like to talk about multi-damage weapons and how the damage is allocated, as well as how many flesh wounds you're able to take before you're removed from play, okay? So with multi-damage weapons, let's say that I was struck by blight launchers and they did 2d3 damage, okay? I failed both of my saves and I'm about to suffer this 2d3 damage. So every time you're picking up more than 1 dice at a time, you're incorporating fast dice rolling. You can fast dice roll all you want to expedite the game, but there's certain moments where you have to take it out of the equation. You have to go 1 dice at a time. When suffering the damage, this is a great example. If I have 2 multi-damage wounds that I'm about to suffer, then it's time to roll 1 and take the amount of damage that it would provide. And if it reduces me to 0 wounds, then that is the amount of damage that I have to, that is the amount of dice that you would roll in the injury table for the damage of the weapon, and you would not continue to the additional D3 damage that is coming through. Like say that I'm Death Guard and I get hit with 2 D3 damage weapons. Then I would get Disgustingly Resilient, Feel No Pain-like saves to avoid that damage. So they would roll the first damage result. Let's say it's a 2 on a D3 result, then I would need to make 2 Disgusting Resilience. If I failed any one of those saves, then I would then have to take 2 damage on the injury table. They would get to roll 2 dice. Not 1 if I saved 1, it's the amount of damage of the weapon is the amount of injury dice that you would roll. So you always roll the number of dice on the injury table as the damage of the weapon, and you take the damage 1 dice at a time. What was that? So now beyond that, of course, every flesh wound you take, then on the injury table, it gives a +1 to the roll. So at a given time, if you were to reach 3 flesh wounds, then that would be +3 to the roll. And even if you rolled a 1, it would become a 4 and you would die. Or of course, if you're obscured, then a 2 would be death. Basically, the game dictates that on your data sheet for each one of your fighters, that once you've maxed out on the boxes for the amount of flesh wounds that you can have, then you're removed from play. And that doesn't go beyond 3. So there's a lot of questions that have popped up. Is there ways to take on a 4th flesh wound or more? And the bottom line is the part where it dictates that once your roster is filled up to its flesh wound total, then it can take no more and you're out of action. So the answer is no. You can have 3 flesh wounds and on the 4th you would die. You take a 4th flesh wound and you are no longer in play. So keep that in mind. That is a thing. Another thing to take note is that when checking to see if your army is going to be broken, or you need to take a broken test, you have to count up all of the different things that are a factor as one total. So for instance, it says that if more than half of your army is out of action, has a flesh wound, or is shaken, then that will apply to whether you need to take a broken test or not. So it's not just counting, well, I have less than half of my guys out of action, and I have less than half of my guys with flesh wounds or shaken, so I don't have to take one. No, you have to add all of it together. So if you had 8 models, then five of these factors would dictate you needing to take more than half of your army, dictating that you need to take a broken test. So if you have 4 models out of action, less than half, but you have 1 on the board with a flesh wound, that equals 5, and you're more than half, and you must take a broken test at that point. So keep that in mind. At first, I didn't realize that they all added up. Maybe you did. Might as well go ahead and give a quick bit of clarity or reminder about the way that selecting your targets in the shooting and how multi-shot weapons would work. Like, so let's say that you have a D6 shot weapon. First, you roll the amount of shots that you have, and then you delegate to the targets that you want to shoot. You can only shoot multi-targets when, of course, they're within 2 inches of one another. And then otherwise, you have to put all the shots into a single target. If you are going to split shot your shots, you must declare who those shots are going to prior to shooting that multi-shot weapon, but after determining the result of how many shots you'll have. But if you actually have 2 different weapons, then unlike in 40K where you must declare all your shots for all your weapons prior to shooting, this is simply that you determine how many shots your weapon has, and you delegate where those shots are going, only multi-shooting if models are within 2 inches of each other. And then beyond that, you then choose independently, and after that, your second weapon. So you can shoot and resolve your first weapon, and if you have a second one, then you can shoot and resolve that. Of course, you can't shoot, if you shoot a pistol, that is the only weapon you can fire for that round. It supersedes your other weapons that you're able to use. Another thing about pistols, of course, is that, you know, some people get it confused and start to gloss over and believe that they can shoot into combat, because it dictates that you can shoot when your own friendly models are within 1 inch of an enemy model. But that is only when you yourself are within 1 inch of an enemy model. So the only time that you're going to shoot your pistol within a combat is when the model itself is in combat. And then keep in mind that if you were charged or charge yourself, then you won't be shooting pistols that round. It's only on the next round that would be able to occur. And then don't forget, of course, that even when you are within 1 inch of an enemy model and can fire your pistols, that it still has to be at the closest enemy model. So you're pretty tethered to how those pistols can fire when you're within close combat. So something else that's became extremely prevalent and became more and more relevant as time has gone on through the different games that I've played, and now is some of the primary tactical focus that I'm thinking about throughout the game, is the universal tactics themselves. You have a way that you can move prior to the any other move occurring at the beginning of the movement phase. You can shoot before any other models are shot, and you can fight before any others fight. I think these are critical to manipulating the way that you need to react to a situation. And it's something that most all my command points are going to in each game. The one that has become the most fundamental to me at this point is now the decisive move for one command point, being able to move a model before any other. At first, I didn't even think that was going to be that handy. But being able to charge the enemy before they charge you when they win the tactical advantage is so clutch. And the order of operations in which each of these motions happen is not exactly laid out in the book. And so I believe that it's a moment of declaration before each round begins and each phase. So I think it's important to give yourself that room. When I'm playing a game before each phase, I always announce to one another for a reminder to both of us, would you like to, take a decisive move here? Would you like to take a decisive shot? Would you like to take a decisive strike? And spend these command points to make this happen. I'm always monitoring how many command points my opponent has and knowing their output ability to do these actions. So in the beginning of the turn, I would say, I would like to make a decisive move. Would you like to as well? It's any time that, and if let's say, if I'd say, do you want to? No. Do you want to? No. They're like, hey, if you do it, I'll do it. Then that's the word. Then you both end up spinning the command point and seeing who gets that tactical move before any other. But I found that to be fundamental in games at this point now, and being able to charge someone or fall back or move before they can charge you is critical components to the game, and I highly suggest thinking deeply about utilizing those in each and every phase, and keeping them in mind that your opponent can do them to you. So that is pretty much the roundup that I want to throw at you right now. Some quick tips that I'll throw out that I want to mention here is one, Battle Scribe. If you're not familiar with Battle Scribe, it's a digital army builder. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and most people are well hip to this. But if you're new to kill teams or just new to tabletop gaming, which this game incentivizes new players into, which I love, you really need to get yourself on that app right away. You can do it on any tablet or phone, and even desktop on your computer. It's free with advertising coming at your face, or like $2 a year, and you don't have to deal with that. I think it's well worth it. I've used it for years now, and if you can get through the download process and getting kill teams integrated into the app, then you're going to be building lists like crazy, and it's wonderful being able to show you what options that you have at your disposal and what you do not when your list has errors within it. Always double check with the rule book to make sure that your final points are correct, but they do a great job. It's basically an army calculator and makes you stay in check when building your army. You can have lots of different varieties quickly, have your command roster, sure, but then have all the different varieties within that command roster that you'd want to present at the field. Really speed up your experience when you get to the table. And yeah, I'd highly recommend that. But yeah, I love kill teams. I think it's a fantastic game, and it's really enlivened me within the hobby. I have a ton of 40K stuff, but right now these tiny skirmishes are some of the most intensive tactical gaming that I got going on with tabletop miniaturing right now. And I find the moment by moment action and the narrative of it all is extremely fun. And don't knock until you try it. Get yourself out there. If you didn't enjoy your first couple games, consider that you might have missed a few details. If you thought it went too easy or it was just one way or the other, the game is quite intricate, and I think has a great balance to it. Every faction has something to bring to the table that's unique to them. It's just about unlocking their special sauce there. So get out there and play some games. I hope you enjoy kill teams as well. I hope this video might have provided you some clarity, or maybe got your noggin turning on some thoughts. If you got some things you'd like to suggest, I'd love to hear it. If you think I'm incorrect about anything I stated, I'd love to hear about it. Subscribe, hit the comments below. Let me know what's going on. Appreciate you. Keep taking fun seriously.